Okay. I'd like to call the meeting of the Finance and Audit Committee to order for April 7th, 2025. I'll now proceed with our land acknowledgement. I'd like to recognize that Ottawa is located on unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Host Nation. The peoples of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The Ottawa Police Service Board honors the peoples and land of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation. Today, Ottawa is home to approximately 40,000 First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Ottawa's Indigenous community is diverse, representing many nations, languages, and customs. The Ottawa Police Service Board honors all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. We're broadcasting on Zoom and live streaming on YouTube. Given this meeting is being held electronically, I want to caution that there's a possibility of technical difficulties. I will now proceed with the confirmation of the agenda. That the Ottawa Police Service Board's Finance and Audit Committee confirmed the agenda of the 7th of April 2025 meeting. Is the agenda confirmed?
Confirmed.
Okay. Confirmation minutes that the Ottawa Police Service Board's Finance and Audit Committee confirmed minutes number 30 of the February 10th, 2025 meeting. Are the meetings confirmed?
Confirmed.
Are there any declarations of interest? Hearing none. For the record, I would like to welcome Member DeRoche for his first Finance and Audit Committee. Welcome, Steve. Okay, no declaration items of business. The first item of business is an update on the 2026 budget process. Chief Stubbs, I will now turn this item over to you and your staff for the presentation, followed by questions and discussions by the committee.
Good. Thank you, Chair Donaldson. So our team is here today to provide the committee with an update on the status of our 2025 budget planning activities, to provide a line of sight on our preliminary projections and some anticipated initiatives in 2025. This will, of course, we're starting early this year because we feel that's the best path to take. So there'll be several opportunities for members of the board and this committee to be informed on the status of the budget and to provide input to us. Other opportunities will also be outlined momentarily by Deputy Chief Bell. So to that end, I will turn it over to Deputy Bell and his team to discuss our budget build process and our consultation approach. Steve.
Yes, thanks, Chief. So can I ask that Bill Merklinger, John Sweet, and John Steinbeck be allowed in, because they're actually carrying the bulk of the presentation as we go through it. And sorry, Chair, we'll just have to wait for them to get on.
Understood.
And they're all on now. So with that, what I'd like to start with is thank the board, thank the committee for having us here. As the chief indicated, we're starting probably a little earlier than we have in the past, but we know we have a challenging budget year ahead of us. And with that, I want to introduce, probably for the first time to this committee, our new Chief Financial Officer, Bill Merklinger, who's been with us for, I believe, around 2 months now. It probably feels like 2 years because we've been very busy. And with that, I'll turn it over to Bill to walk us through the slide deck.
Thank you, DC Bell. So beginning with the budget process slide, this covers the steps and timelines for the 2026 budget. OPS will be following our standard budget build process in preparing the 2026 budget. This process and timelines are laid out here for the committee for your reference. As you will see, activities are already underway. Activities will include drafting of the budget book, drafting the budget directions report, receiving necessary approvals, bringing the budget book to the board and council, and ultimately receiving approval. OPS, as the committee would know, recommends to the board, and then the board provides directions to OPS for the 2026 budget. Thank you, and I'll hand it over to John Steinbeck.
Thanks, Bill. So every year we bring a report forward in around May or June to talk about consultation as part of the budget discussion. Again, we're starting this process with the new CSPA. There's a few requirements that the board is required to do for consultation, and you see them listed up there in terms of talking to local First Nations groups, to the municipal council, school boards, etc. We always build that into our plan this year, but we're trying to adhere very strictly to the CSPA just to make sure we're covering off all the pieces. Below is a range of options that we're beginning to discuss, and it will be for the board's decision in May with the board report, and I'll be running it by Habib as well. On the top of it is a leadership discussion where we're going to develop a small program for the board, for the board members with some key questions and contacts that we would suggest that we be reaching out to. We have a citizen perception survey that we can both do through advanced polling as well as on our own website. We can sort out, set up community workshops, for example, with the CEC and groups like that, and focus groups as well. We do have the internal member survey. There was some discussion of this. This will be difficult to deliver by budget time, just based on the procurement process and the time it would take to get that done. And the last 2 points would be, but we can come up with a small internal approach that we can develop. And then the last two obviously are an environmental scan and some data-driven insights, so we can look at some of the data that's out there and try to, like we did last year, and try to draw some interesting perspectives on what the community is thinking based on different data sets that exist. We're always looking for feedback on this piece here. If there's anything the board would like us to include or explore, really we're open to any idea that's out there, and we can go and cost it and help the board understand what that would take to deliver. Obviously, this would be done in multiple languages that we've been doing every year. So, but all of this will be combined into a report in May for the board's approval, and any feedback is welcomed. That's about it for me on consultation.
Thank you, John, and good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. The numbers in the table included in this slide are taken from the 2025 budget book and what we are forecasted as initial requirements for 2026. Last year's estimates are our usual starting point for the upcoming year's budget. So to touch on this budget scenario, the numbers presented in this table is what I will start with the maintained services category. So this includes the cost for the negotiated contract agreement for the OPA, which will see an increase of 3.5% in 2026. There is also a budget-based shortfall in the 2025 budget from the 2025 salary increase that is being added to the 2026 pressure. Taking the OPA agreement and a similar provision for the SOA contract, those two in itself result in a $24 million pressure. The maintained services category also includes the commitment for year 3 of the staff stabilization plan. And lastly, there is also a provision for inflationary pressures on goods and services. The second category of growth includes an additional 50 positions being added to OPS to address both new and emerging operational pressures, and as well as to address the demands associated with population growth. The third category is a funding provision that is set aside for new services. Funding in this category includes the following 2 items: short-term and long-term funding pressures to provide a facility solution to meet the legislative training requirements for our officers, an amount for strategic projects such as DIMS and the rollout of body-worn cameras. The fourth category of efficiencies includes a preliminary target for OPS in recognition that continuous improvement is an ongoing exercise that we undertake and are committed to. The last category of user fees and revenues has a small revenue increase from the annual changes in our pricing schedule, as well as another $1 million in revenue being allocated from the automated speed enforcement cameras. These preliminary numbers provide us with an expected pressure of $44.2 million for 2026, which represents a police tax increase of 10.6%. And the last item that I want to mention is the assessment growth estimate of 1.5%. We are currently using last year's figures as an estimate at this time. The exact amount won't be known from the city until the fall. I'll now turn the presentation back over to the CFO. Thanks.
Thank you, John. So with respect to the strategic direction slide, the board, as you know, approved the 2024 to 2027 strategic plan, which sets out OPS strategic direction. This translates into approximately 30 strategic projects, which are listed on this slide, which align with the 4 strategic pillars. Most of these projects are funded through our annual budget process. However, a few projects, as noted on the slide, are funded by the federal government, such as the Parliamentary Precinct Deployment Model, and a few projects by the Government of Ontario, for example, the Mounted Patrol Unit. Thank you, and I'll hand it over now to DC Bell.
Yep, thank you, Bill and John. So that gives us the update on where we are. As the FAC knows, as the committee knows, and as the board knows, we'll have multiple interaction points with you as we develop this budget. But we just wanted to provide you the overview of how we were going to approach it this year and bring you up on where we left off last year with our 2026 forecast included in the 2025 budget. So with that, we're happy to take any questions from you.
Thank you all. Do committee members have any questions or comments to make? Member Curry.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you very much for that. A couple of different topics. In terms of the consultation, and I'm wondering if we can actually get that slide back up there. I think it's the second slide. So I guess I will lead with the CSPA indicates that the board shall consult on the strategic plan, right? And so just looking at that first sentence, in compliance with the Community Safety and Policing Act 2019, the service conducts annual consultations to support the budget and related initiatives, including preparation and revision of the strategy. The board shall consult at a minimum. So I'm just wondering if that's actually correct. The board shall consult on not necessarily the budget, right? The board consults on the strategic plan and expects that the service will consult on the budget and all that goes into the budget. So, but the board consults on the strategic plan, the service consults on the budget, the board expects that the service will consult on the budget. And I don't mean to be picky, but I just want to make sure that's very clear. The board would not be out consulting, expect the service to consult on this.
So I can give you some historical context to that. So you're absolutely right. The service will consult on the budget up until the point that we table it. And we will come to the board in November, trying to think of my dates, in November, and we'll table a budget. That will then give about a 30-day period that the board is then seized with consulting on the tabled budget prior to approving it or amending it and then taking it before council. So you're right, we do consult and we try and do as much as we can in conjunction with the board because it's a better collaborative effort. With the board, we'll do the consultation to build the budget, but ultimately there is a 1-month period that the board is seized with consulting and getting feedback on the tabled budget.
Sure.
So I hope that answers the question.
Fair enough. And then the board's consultation really is within our governance structure, right? So we have committees that people can come and delegate and board, although we have board delegation. So, but we can have an opportunity to do that differently every year, depending on what we prefer to do. But I mean, I guess my overall message, and I see that the chief has his hand up, but my overall message is that the board has already stated these are the strategic priorities. We would expect that the budget is going to match up. And I like that. The last slide there, it says here are the 30, I think 1 or whatever projects, depending on how you count them, that the budget is going to align with those because those align with the strategic plan, which is what the board said, just so we have everybody in their job description who's doing what. Maybe a comment from the chief.
Thank you, Chair Donaldson and Member Curry. Of course, what Deputy Bell said is accurate. The thing I would say that, as we develop the budget and then table it for the board to then, for that 1-month-ish period to consult, it is the board's responsibility to seek that consultation. We do, of course, assist greatly with that. John Steinbachs and his team usually will do a survey. We'll do what we can to assist the board with that consultation. And I know the chair at times will meet with different groups as well to find out their perspective. So it is a collaborative teamwork throughout the process, but that 1 month period is key. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, certainly. I definitely understand that. The other thing I was going to just say in terms of consultation is as much as, and that's why I was glad to see that slide that showed the project and the strategic, the 4 pillars, if that's what we call them. As much as the consultation can align with that, so obviously there'd be a presentation to whoever you're consulting with to say, this is the strategic plan. These are the projects that go with the strategic plan. This is, an opportunity to say, what do you think of this budget? But the budget should fundamentally align with it. So I'm hoping that constant, and I don't know if it's education as you're going along, that people do understand. We don't build budgets just to build them for fun. We actually align them with strategic planning. So as much as you can do that, that would be great. And then the other thing I was just going to say was the member survey. So I heard John Steinbeck say that may take some time. I'm wondering if and I think he indicated this, there may be sort of a quicker way to do this. And I'm wondering if we can't just sort of, use another organization's version of that. I think there are some faster ways to get surveys to members in terms of their overall, what they think of the budget and how are they doing, and do they think this budget aligns with the priorities that they think, we should have or are in our strategic plan, whatever. I don't know that it needs to be so sophisticated and taking a long time. So I don't know if there's a comment on that.
If I can just interject, one of the things we need to be aware of for the internal member survey is there's a component of it that's required for this committee, but it's also important to the Human Resources Committee as part of their work. So I believe there's an overlap, and there's certain components that we may need for finance and audit, but I think probably the lead as far as developing what is required for an internal member survey will probably come from Human Resources. And I know Deputy Chair Carr is on the line if she wants to sort of comment on that at all.
I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't really have anything to add.
Okay.
I'm
Thank
not
you.
aware.
Sorry. So I interrupted. So does anybody else want to respond to Member Curry's query about whether it's possible to do something on a more expeditious basis?
John, did you want to talk to that perhaps?
Yeah, we can bring back some options. I think what it comes down to, though, is how scientific and specific the board would like the survey to be. So if you look at what the Calgary board did, and what we've done in the past with companies like Talent Map, they have expert employee relationship type researchers who can design, gather, and analyze the information. Given our internal expertise, we can definitely put out surveys internally, but in terms of the analysis and the full understanding of the issues there, we don't have that internal skill set on employee relations. That's a sort of specific area. So we can definitely draw on members' viewpoints on certain things. But what you end up missing is there's a level of rigor that's missing with that, and there's a level of expertise, especially when you get into questions of morale and how people feel about their current situation and where those trends are moving to. So of course we can put out like a survey internally, but it's just, again, the rigor and the scientificness and the insights that could be drawn upon that are definitely not as strong as by a professional company. But we can do an earlier pulse check in the summer, give the board a sense of what's going on. I would still strongly encourage the board's idea of going with a proper internal survey. I still think we need to do that. But for this session, we can definitely do a pulse check quicker in the summer, if that makes sense.
Okay, fair enough. Maybe we can talk about it offline too. I'm just thinking of ones that I know about, but I'm gonna not ask my next question because I would like Member DeRoche to go first, and then I have a question on the 10.6.
Member DeRoche?
I'm flattered, and in some ways from that remark. You could have went though, Director Curry. So my reaction is really just, it's a high level presentation. We're early. So my comments are really just at that highest level. I think, in the consultation, whether that be internally or externally or with the board, at least of late, there's been a trend with the city to try and get the budget consultations out early. I generally support that, but if we're not ready, we're not ready. And that's the same message I've said to staff. You can go out and kind of have what I think are kind of fruitless conversations, or you can have something before people to talk to them. So I don't know what the timing is for the city. I think they're finalizing that, but we will do what we do as a police service, but I think we need to just be aware of that trend that I think the city is trying to get out earlier in the process for kind of the public engagement. I think you'll also get some questions on the red light camera revenue, as you did in the past, and I share the view that we have to be very cautious on the communication around that, given that I think we've said that the revenue collected will go towards ensuring further public safety on our roads, whether that be certainly at the city, in hard infrastructure in terms of traffic calming, or some of our soft infrastructure, the traffic calming. And I think some councillors are a little surprised, as you recall last year. So I'm just wondering if you can talk about that revenue and then where it would be applied, and your ability to answer the question. Yeah, it's not going into slush. We are keeping to the principle of this, that the money will go to ensuring that our roads are safe as intended. Again, there's a real concern about there that governments will start to drift on that, and I just hope that we are going to be putting it towards true road safety and not kind of slushing.
Member Donaldson, or Chair Donaldson, do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Member DeRoche. It is as you noted, when Deputy Bell and I were in front of the 24 councillors at budget time last December, it was a topic that got discussed for 15 or 20 minutes in terms of that point. And that point was taken in terms of, reporting back on that money in terms of what we're doing with it. And certainly it's directed to our traffic services unit, and we have a number of initiatives that we have, be it Residents Matter as it relates to stunt driving and noisy vehicles, et cetera. Our RIDE program for impaired driving, and et cetera. They have a number of projects, and it is our intention to report back on that.
Okay, that's good to hear. Yeah, was someone else going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, and we did understand too that I think as part of the audit at the City Hall, not to do with the OPS, but there was an audit of that program in its totality, and we're part of that. So I think we are also, we'll be working with the Auditor General as well in terms of that portion of, or our piece of the pie within that program as well.
Okay. And then I noted just on assessment growth, and I think it's the same always. You don't always know until you get closer to the date, and I assume the 1.5 is a conservative estimate of assessment growth.
Deputy Bell, what maybe I think that's our general number that we use, but I'll
Thanks, Chief. Yeah, so that's been generally the number. It hasn't often drifted below that. It's kind of the median average that we're using. A couple occasions it has been higher than that, but it's just one of our planning assumptions that we start with, and we'll adjust that as the direction from council comes in.
Okay. Thank you for that. My last question is on the federal government relief, provincial relief, and I understand that some of it is directed funding. So it's relief in the sense that it strengthens the safety blanket of the city, if you will, but it's it perhaps doesn't provide the kind of relief that we're hoping for, unless you tell me it is providing relief in the sense that we don't have to fund it. So it's always that. But I guess I'm looking at sort of the federal precinct announcement. It's probably early because we're in the midst of the election campaign, but I'm hoping that provides us with some flexibility in the budget. Then if there's some dedicated payments that are going towards kind of the precinct, then the officers that are being stretch to go down there and taking from, various parts of the city, we have some capacity. So I guess that's my question. Like, the announcements that we've had, does it provide us with any benefit other than just paying for some like directed activities?
Right. Very good question, Member DeRoche. And it is something that we do want to talk a lot about, because we do hear that, the increases that we got from the provincial and the federal government, and there is new money there, but they are for specific programs. They are for, the federal precinct, as you noted. They are for a mounted unit. They are for some byward market programs, the helicopter, etc. But we've already included sort of that relief within our ask. In terms of, as you saw, what makes up that number, I think 6.2%, I think it was, is our CBA requirements, our collective bargaining agreement that we made with, that the board agreed to with the OPA. That accounts for over 6% of that demand. And then our staff stabilization plan, which is a key tenet of our strategic plan, which feeds in a lot of the initiatives and our units, also is included in that. And that together is about 9%. So the federal and the provincial money, some of those programs we hope will provide relief in the respect that our frontline folks won't have to respond to some calls in the precinct, or that the calls in the byward market will decrease because of our efforts with the provincial programs that we have. But the direct relief from those programs has already been calculated into our forecast. Deputy Bell, do you have anything that you wanted to add to what I just said?
No, I think you covered it, Chief.
Okay, and perhaps just so that I understand, so we would have some FTEs, we would have some personnel costs that would be responding to Hill incidents and protests and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're going to be 100% or whatever funded by the federal government. Why doesn't so you're saying it does provide us with some capacity, but it is being consumed by the 6.2 and the 9%, right? So it is helping us in a sense, because we're not paying for those constables twice. Maybe someone can, to me, it's a bit of a show the math answer. And maybe if someone could expand on it.
Sure. Steve, whether you want to go to Bill or John in terms of some of that math versus the, and maybe before I pass it over, yes, some of the federal money and the provincial money does pay for boots on the ground, does pay for sworn police officers, and in some cases a few civilians as well too, that are providing new programs and new and very directed funding for us, where we can't, for example, take some of those people and have them work on a drug file, or have them work on a sexual assault, or respond to calls. So they're very contained in a role. But it is, of course, with hope that they will assist with taking call volumes in some respects. But Steve, is there anything, maybe, I don't know if your team, John or Bill, wants to talk about on more of the number side?
So we can, we've laid out previously, and Member DeRoche will actually lay it out again for you. We could provide you a full briefing on the costing. I think the important thing in when we talk about the relief that it provides, all of the federal and provincial funding is for directly net new programming with services being provided, and we have to meet those services within special geographic areas. I think the relief that you're going to see is right now, particularly in the federal district, those services are provided almost exclusively by people that should be in your neighborhoods doing work for your area. So while it doesn't allow us to have less people within the organization, what it does allow us is for people to do the jobs that they were assigned to do and actually meet the mandates of those jobs. So the relief that we get is actually improved productivity and the ability of people to meet the needs of what their actual job is. So I don't know if that explains it to you. We're happy to happy to provide you more information around the actual funding that we've got in all the different streams. We have a good package that's been provided before and can provide that again.
Okay. No, I'm fine for now. Thank you. And I'll follow it as we go forward. And, obviously, under some pressures here and, look forward to some further dialogue in terms of how we're going to deal with some of these pressures. Thanks.
Thanks, Member Dross. Member Curry, you mentioned you had another question or two.
Yeah, and so if we can just go back to that slide where that shows the 10.6%. And this is more of I know this is early days, right? I'm just wondering when we go out to consult, if we could display it, in many different ways, not necessarily different from what we have here, but again, going back to the strategic plan with the 4 pillars, it might be helpful for people to see the 10.6, where does most of it fall? What category, which pillar hits it? And maybe it is more of one than the other. Maybe it's equally distributed across the 4. That I think might be helpful when you go out to consult and share that, because I think then the questions have to be, okay, well, is this area then you think one we should reduce? If we're trying to achieve our goals and objectives and outcomes from the strategic plan and the key performance indicators, what are you okay with if people decide they would like to see a smaller increase? So that's one point I was going to make. The second point I was going to make is that 10.6% is what the increase is over the current budget. Of what we have right now, we're needing a 10.6% increase to the current budget. That doesn't mean that the city needs to have a 10.6% increase in its budget, right? And I think that's important for people to understand that, because people see that number and they think, oh my gosh, my taxes are going up overall as a city budget, 10.6%. That's not the case. We're talking about one budget, right? And I just think that it's sometimes helpful to reinforce that with people, because one of the arguments that I've heard from the police services, which is fair, is that cop per pop ratio has not grown at the same rate as the city budget has grown, where you have population driving city increases, right? And I know this may seem like it's granular, but I just think people need to understand what we're talking about here, so that it's not confusing when they go out, because I think people just go, oh, 10.6, oh my gosh, that's a big number. Well, but if you look at, had we actually had the police services budget grow with the right cop per pop ratio, what would it have looked like other years that now we're seeing sort of more increases all at once? So I just sort of wanted to make that comment, because again, this is early days, right? Maybe it will end up at 10.6, but it might be helpful for people to see what that number really means, as opposed to it just being a number that seems high to some.
Thank you, Member Curry. Agree with you in terms of your suggestion, attaching sort of some dollar value to those initiatives in the pillars. I think that makes a lot of sense. We do have compiled, and again, as I think Member DeRoche mentioned, this is very high level, not getting into the weeds, but we have compiled and are compiling a lot of data attached to this ask that will better explain more clearly as we move along in this process to the board, to city councilors, to the community as well.
Great. And then my last just question is, and maybe you can tell me what pillar it's under, but the body worn cameras that we delayed, deferred, whatever. It is a recommendation from the audit that was done that we should have those, and we do think that they're valuable. So if someone were to say, well, what bucket would that fall under? Why would we make sure we do that other than the auditor's recommendation? What does it help us with in terms of the strategic plan?
Right. Yeah, it is in the strategic. A lot of the initiatives in the strategic plan do sort of branch out into other pillars as well too. But obviously, the body worn camera program, when you look at it, it does build up community trust as well too in some segments that don't have trust in policing. So we have that does help. It also this is something that our membership wants as well too, and the community has told us they want it as well. Not all the community, I talk in general, they want this program. So it is included in our budget, in our ask. We have delayed it for a number of years. I can't say for certain, but I'm pretty certain we're the only police agency of our size, of the larger agencies in Canada, that have not implemented a program, a body-worn camera program. So it is certainly something that we want to deliver on in 2026. At least have that pilot that we've been talking about, launch the pilot, and then go from there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Member DeRoche? You're on mute, Steve.
Thanks. Thanks for that. This morning I was talking to the city manager about any potential savings with the gas tax or the carbon tax relief holiday, whatever it's going to look like going forward. Do we have any potential savings as a result of that on our fuel expenditures?
Deputy Bell?
So yeah, what I would say is there will be some moderate savings in that, and we'll actually calculate that and incorporate it into this. We have, over the last couple of years, underestimated fuel costs, and that's what's been put into our budget. So when we have $1.50 a liter gas, we've been estimating around $1.35 as an example. So that's come to the board as a pressure that we've seen year over year. So we'll make sure to look at properly estimating our gas rates and taking into account the carbon tax relief that we're getting now.
Okay. And could someone just remind me what was the police services increase last year? Or this is the third one of this term. What was year one and what was year two?
So we've always, sorry, Chief, we've always been consistent with what has been directions from the board, and they have been consistent with the recommendation that have been provided to them by council. So first year of this term was 2.5 plus 1.5 assessment growth, I believe. Same the second year, and last year was 2.9% with 1.5% assessment growth. So we've always been in line with all of the other city departments.
Okay. Okay. Well, like I said, it's very early in the discussions, and I can't give any sort of insights in terms of what I think the expectations will be, but the numbers here are quite diversion from the last 2 years. So again, it's early, so we'll see how the dialogue goes. That's it for me, Chair. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Member Curry?
Sorry, thanks. Member DeRoche reminded me of something. So when do you think we will have any reports, or will they be regular? And, this world is changing every moment, but the tariffs, the impact on our fleet purchases, our equipment, body worn cameras. So many of these things are potentially coming from the country that may have a tariff on it, or we may have to put a tariff on. And then the other is data sovereignty, and what, the cost might be for us to make sure our data is kept in Canada. I mean, all companies are looking at that right now. Certainly from my neck of the woods, I hear about it a lot, and this does and probably will affect our budget. So just wondering when the board would find out more information on that. And again, really glad we're starting this early.
Chief?
So, yeah, thanks, Chief. So in terms of data, what I can tell you is we house all of our data internally in Canada. It's been a long-standing practice of ours, and we won't actually engage in any contract that doesn't have a national warehouse storage associated to it. So that isn't an issue for us at this point. In terms of tariff tracking, we are actually in the very early days, Bill and John set up a system to take a look at how we were going to track tariffs and impacts of tariffs on us. We know from a fleet perspective, it's going to create a pressure for us this year we anticipate, depending on how long it lasts, of about $2 million. So we're already trying to calculate, recognize those, and figure out solutions against the pressures it's going to create on our budget.
Great to hear on both counts. Thank you very much.
So that anticipated one of my questions. I was going to raise the question on tariffs. So thank you for that, Deputy Chief, and thank you for Member Curtis for bringing it up. I just want to remind the members of the committee that what we've been looking at is a projection that was in the 2025 budget. And that one of the things that is extremely encouraging and welcome is the activity of the service to continue to monitor budget and keep this committee informed on an ongoing basis of any changes to that budget as they start developing 2026. So sort of appreciate the input, appreciate the presentation, and certainly some good questions arising from it. But again, that number will change. It may hopefully go down, probably may go up, but it depends on what happens with some of the pressures that the service is dealing as they refine the process. But I fully expect and I'm comfortable that this committee will continue to be getting timely information on the 2026 budget as it evolves. I guess the only other thing, do any other members of the board who are present have any questions they'd like to, comments they'd like to make? Seeing none. If there's no further questions from the committee, it is recommended that the Ottawa Police Service Board's Finance and Audit Committee receive this item for information and discussion. Is the item received?
Received.
Thank you. The next item, 4.2, is update on the implementation of the CSPA. Chief, I'll hand it over to you for the verbal update.
Thank you, Chair Donaldson. The CSBA, we had our 1-year anniversary with that legislation in force on April 1st. So it's been an interesting year of not only for the OPS, I think for the board, as well as for other agencies across Ontario, trying to determine the different paths that we have to take with some of the legislation. But we are smarter today than we were a year ago in terms of a number of items that we've come to ground on in the past. But a lot of work has went into this by the service, and John Steinbach's is here to and his team to provide that update. John.
Yeah, thanks, Chief. Yeah, this is just a short verbal update to just that we thought, since it's April and it's been a year, we just wanted to give the board a sense of some of the progress we've been making. We will be bringing a report in May, and so this is both an update and to see what information the board would like to have. I can tell you, just as the chief said, at a high level, we've made a lot of progress in the last year, especially around issues around equipment and training. We've done very well there. We are now beginning to tackle a lot of not now, but we are continuing to tackle some of the more complicated policy issues, like you saw last week when we were talking about Section 19, and there's some discussion around a critical points policy that Habib and I have been speaking about. So there's a lot of work going on there. In terms of training and equipment, just so you know, we're about 100% compliant on all equipment related requirements. Training is going well, but just like all training, there is issues around capacity and ability to get courses. So we're working on that. Policy development, we are combing through the entire act to make sure we are both identifying changes that we need to make and also prioritizing those changes so we deal with the most important issues first. There's the governance and board relations aspect of this discussion. I don't know if you've been briefed yet about the critical points policy that Toronto has recently passed, and it's a policy that discussed, the IOP sent an update on it. It's a policy that helps the board and the service understand where the critical points of decision making and the board's roles are during issues of significance, like a major event and when updates should be occurring. That's something we're going to be talking about in the spring. The Section 19 assistance orders has been an issue throughout the year. We've seen some changes there, but I think we've got that nailed down well last week, and Habib and I have been talking about it. And finally, you'll be hearing more about this later, the quality assurance and data requirements. I don't know if the board has had a chance to read the strategic plan from the IOP, but that's a key focus of the IOP is both gathering data from all police services, creating, I don't know, for those of you who are around to remember OMBI, and sort of a benchmarking initiative that appears to be what the IOP is undertaking. That is a significant amount of work, and it does draw a lot of attention, and we're going to have to, we're beginning to turn our minds to that as well. And of course, the quality assurance around, QA, policy, and audit. That's a key focus for us. In the May update, we will have a better assessment of what we think are the costings for the CSPA. We're doing a review of all of it now, so we can make sure that's part of the discussion in May. So in terms of next steps, we're completing our full assessment of the CSPA requirements. We're finalizing our priority policies and procedures. We're continuing the training rollouts and solutions, and we will have that report in May. I'll talk to Habib about whether he wants to put his portion of the CSPA update into that report so we can have it in one piece for the board's review. Beyond that, this was just more of a check-in and to see if the board had any questions we could answer now or in the May report. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, John. Yeah, we are well taken care of by our executive director. So both the Metro Toronto and the IOP reports have been distributed to the board and to the committee. Member Curry, any questions?
Yeah, I was just going to make a comment on that. So do we understand that that's one where the IOP is saying boards should just adopt what Toronto has? Is that a messaging, or is it, because remember we were at the governance conference and I asked the Inspector General, do you see a time where there will be these template policies that boards can just adopt more quickly and save quite a lot of money on policy reviews? And he said, yeah, that our end goal is to have a lot of them. Is this one that may be the one that's a template, or we're just sort of directed, let critical points just do what Toronto has done?
I'm wondering if either John or maybe our executive director would like to respond to that as well. I know it's
thank you for this question. Regarding the critical points policy adopted by Toronto, it has been presented as a best practice by the Inspector General, but I think some caution should be, we should have some caution before adopting it, as it may not be adapted to our specific needs. And I know that in Toronto, they had intense discussions and hesitations about the scope of what should constitute a critical point triggering or elevating an issue to the board's immediate attention. So I would recommend a careful examination before considering the adoption of that as a template. And the general direction, my understanding is that the general direction from Solgen at least is that we will see less ready to adopt policy templates than under the PSA, because the Act, as it is understood by the oversight authorities, requires some contextualization in many areas.
Okay, fair enough. I can see that. It's just that if the IOP is going to say this is a best practice, on something that's critical points, which I think is one of the most important things that boards need to understand, critical points can't be that different from area to area. Critical points tend to be critical points. So I'm wondering about that. And even just if they did spend a lot of time debating it, and then the IOP saying it's a best practice, would we be smart to say, okay, we want to have this made in Ottawa version? I don't know. Okay, anyway, I like these updates though. I just want to say thanks to John, and if John has further comment or anyone else, then that's great.
John, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, so we have some ongoing conversations right now with the Toronto Police Service to understand how they develop the actual machinations behind the scenes. I do hope that Member Curry's right and we can use some template policies. It really would take down the load. However, I do think we need to sort of take a workshop approach here once we get it, and then maybe run it through do a tabletop exercise on some scenarios. Just to make sure that it works, that it works the way we think it'll work. And we can, I could see us maybe building that into some of the IECT and some of the regular workshops we do around large events, just to test it out, to make sure there's no holes in it. but ideally it's applicable, and it just has to be maybe, tailored a bit to our local situation.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thanks. Member DeRoche?
Thanks, Chair. When John was talking about sort of the benchmarking, if you could just expand on that, like what are we benchmarking? And you talked about the municipal one that I think we're kind of in favor, in kind of we're popular. I won't say popular, but there was an interest at one time, and then it kind of weaned. And I always worry about these exercises that, there's a lot of admin that goes into feeding it and getting the numbers right and getting our inputs right. And then there's just, not a lot of interest in the outcome, right? Because we often say, well, we're Ottawa, we're different. And, we can stand behind that because we're the nation's capital, because we have different winters, all these other things. So I guess just the concern is how much work goes into these benchmarking, right? So that, we're truly using them versus really just helping other municipalities see what we're doing.
Not sure who responds to that. Chief?
Go ahead, John, if you want to talk to that.
Yeah, so that's exactly so. The counselors, we're thinking about that's exactly what we're thinking about. I can tell you that the IOP has done a major data pull from all police services, and we participated in that, and we provided information. But they've mentioned in their strategic plan about this performance measurement. Obviously, we'd hope that the performance measurement was around improving efficiency and effectiveness, and that was the focus. But we want to make sure we're providing them with the right, accurate information. So we're comparing apples to apples. That we've all seen the disasters where people compare the wrong numbers and it just looks askew. And as part of that'll be in the May report. Another portion we're looking at is the overall cost of oversight and the CSPA. That it's very important, and we agree it's important, but we also want to keep track on what the burden of this is, such as a data pull every year and the comparison. So those questions you had or those comments are exactly what's on our mind.
Okay, good, because I think with the crunch that we are under and always are under for a service, that if there was some increase in administrative costs or hirings to just feed this beast, this process, like I would have concerns with that in terms of how we rank that as a priority. And do we truly use this as an agency, or are we really just serving other objectives that don't fit in with our priorities? Anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you. That's all for now, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair Donaldson, I might just add to Member DeRoche's comments. That's something that we have certainly discussed a lot about, in particular in the last week, or I'm sorry, the last month, in regards to the demand of some parts of the CSPA. When you take the literal, words that it's explaining on a particular topic, there is a lot of work that goes into it. To what end? And some of it is oversight, some of it is very good, but some of it we are scratching our heads a little bit in terms of, if it takes 20 hours to get this one number, is it worth it? And we are struggling with some of it, where we are convinced that we have to grow our team to, and in particular John's team, to in order for us to satisfy some of the requirements of the act.
Yeah, thanks, Chief. And you came from the RCMP. I do not want our service to become a federal department, right? Like, I think we have to be agile and have our resources, be responsible and have good, solid administration. But I don't want us to be a federal department. Thanks.
Or do I?
Thanks for that, Chief. Are there any questions of any of the board members present? Hearing, seeing none. It's recommended the Ottawa Police Service Finance and Audit Committee receive this item for information and discussion. Is the information received?
Received.
Thank you. The next item is 4.3 South Facility Project Update, first quarter 2025. Before I turn over the chief, I had an opportunity of coming back from Riverside on Friday and passed by the South Building. Probably endangered the public because of my shock and my inability to drive properly. It is an amazing upgrade from what I saw back in the winter. So with that caveat, turn it over to the chief. Is there anything you'd like to add or have your staff add to this report?
Thank you, Chair Donaldson. I agree. An incredible amount of work being done on that site. I drove by it about 2 weeks ago, and I think there's some updates that Deputy Bell and Ingrid are going to give. Some of it very encouraging. Some of it, well, whenever you have a project of this size, there's always some hurdles we have to overcome. So I think we're going to talk a little bit about that. But it's very impressive. Deputy Bell, over to you and your team.
Yeah, thanks, Chief, and thanks, Chair. We're pretty excited with how this is progressing. Like the Chief said, we're going to identify some of the challenges we're seeing right now, but that we feel we're on top of. And with that, I'll turn it over to Bill and Ingrid.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Bell. So our objective for this update, the agenda slide, is to provide a quarterly update to the South Facility project, specifically the key metrics, the risks and mitigation strategies, as well as a financial overview and next steps. If we could just go to the next page, please. Thank you very much. So at this point in the project life cycle, it is a good news story. And the leading practice that is used for reporting to governance on projects of this nature is to use 4 key metrics. And you see them on the slide: budget, schedule, scope, and change management. By change management, we mean ensuring that there's a robust plan in place to fit up the building once it's constructed, to move in our employees and achieve full operational status without any major issues. Chair members, you can see on this slide that 3 of the 4 key metrics are green, with only the schedule being red. And by that, we mean that the completed building will be delivered to OPS in May 2027, which is later than initially planned when we launched the project. However, there's a logical explanation for that delay and why this pillar is red. And it's because of the piling delay, for 2 main reasons. The piling delays due to unforeseen soil conditions was the major reason, as well as the addition of the 3rd floor to the structure, which had been considered at one time to be used as for a city partner to occupy. So I would say to you that it is not unusual for a project of this complexity and size to have one of the 4 pillars red. Our assessment is that this project is on track to be a great success. So the construction of the South Facility today is 45% complete. It'll be a great facility for OPS. By that, we mean functional and people-friendly spaces. As you would know by now, the OPS has invited you and other dignitaries to a thorough site tour on May the 9th in the early afternoon. And it's to celebrate what we call the topping off stage, when the building has reached its highest level of construction. So OPS, we know, again, with a project of this nature, it is highly complex with many moving parts. So for that reason, OPS will continue to tightly manage the project for its remaining 2 years to ensure sound stewardship, to manage any emerging risks, to continue to report to you and the board on a quarterly basis, and to ensure overall project success. So thank you. And now I would hand it over to my colleague, Ingrid.
Thank you, Bill, and good afternoon, committee members. So since our last report in November 2024, construction has progressed from 33% to 45%, as Bill mentioned, and that's to the end of this first quarter of this year. So we can really see the building starting to take shape now as we reach the upper level steel structures and the roof assembly. To share some of the activities that are taking place, so we are reviewing the documentation and quotes for the top floor interior construction, and that is nearly complete, as indicated by the 98% complete in the graphics at the top left. This work will be finalized in the coming month, thus officially incorporating the interior construction of the top floor into the project. Work associated with the tenant fit-up project stream is also progressing. The design team and OPS are coordinating the schedule to correspond with the construction, and they're starting into activities that have longer durations. For example, inventory of our existing furniture and equipment. We're looking for where these items can be reused and relocated to the new facility, leading to efficiencies in the financial process. The project is also carefully reviewing the impacts of the added top floor interior, both from a schedule and cost perspective. And of course, we're keeping an eye on any materials that are carrying tariffs. At present, it does appear that construction is ahead of any major purchases that are carrying tariffs. So on this slide at the top left, I'd first like to bring to your attention the updated project budget, which now stands at $187.7 million. This value represents a reduction of $6 million from the previous reporting period, with the reduction approved through the 2025 budget process, where $6 million was returned to the general reserves. To the middle of March, the project has spent or committed just under $140 million, which translates close to $50 million still available within the project budget. In Q1, there was nominal increase of spending. 2 contracts were issued totaling approximately $130,000, but approximately $80,000 was recovered through closing out various procurement services. Therefore, there was a net total spending or committed of $50,000. Specifically related to the construction contract, which is the graphic in the middle, the general contractor has invoiced for 40% of the base construction purchase order, which aligns appropriately with the extent of construction work completed, which we've mentioned is at 45% complete. For the construction contingency, what is represented in the bar chart is the actual invoice to the end of Q1. However, the contingency is effectively at $14 million, with approximately $10 million of this value directly attributed to the unforeseen soil conditions that impacted the piling work at the beginning of construction. If we put the $10 million linked to the soil conditions to the side, the contingency spending to date is appropriately aligned to a construction of this value and complexity and to the current completion and progress on site. It is very important to note that the overall project remains and does not exceed the total project budget listed at $187 million. So some of the project activities we will see in the next quarter include significant progress on the roof assemblies, infrastructure rough-in, and the building starting to be fully enclosed. We anticipate that all quotes and schedules negotiated for the top floor interior construction, we can see them fully integrated into the master construction contract. And in the background, the tenant fit-up team will begin their furniture procurement planning. So we are really pleased to bring this update to you today. So as you can see from some of these pictures, construction really pushed ahead during the winter, and the building structure is really starting to take shape now. Thank you very much.
So with that, we're happy to take any questions, and we're just as happy to come back next quarter because we've committed to a quarterly update to the board and bring you pictures without snow in it, which I think we all look forward to. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Deputy. And I know we're looking forward to the top-up ceremony on May 9th, and thank you, Ingrid, for the detail in the presentation. I have Member Curry and then Member Durash.
Yeah, and I just want to quickly say that on the board website, on the city website, the report for this item is actually under item 4.4, standing update on quality assurance. For some reason, that report didn't go under the right heading. So if anybody's watching and wondering where the report is, there's actually a report at a different link, but under standing update on quality assurance. I don't know how these things happen, but I thought I would tell people. The next thing I wanted to say was, so the soil conditions, the unforeseen soil conditions, like I thought it was my understanding that there are all kinds of soil tests done before anything even starts. How is it that nobody knew that this was going to be a problem right from the start? Like I thought these were done way, way, way in advance.
So they were done way, way in advance. We had consultants in to provide us their best estimates on exactly what the soil conditions would look like and what we were dealing with. Unfortunately, as is common in any construction process, the hardest thing to do is get out of the ground. And we did come across unforeseen soil conditions that required considerable remediation in our pilings. And that's where you're seeing the costs associated with this.
Okay, so fair enough. They truly were unforeseen. We didn't change anything because I know there was like this slight change, but it wasn't anything to do with us. It was just someone or somehow it just was not picked up.
one of the challenges, we're building right next to the river, and we know that those soil conditions are very challenging to build on and in, and that's why we did as much as we could do, short of dig up the entire area, to get somebody to come in and help us give best estimates on what it would look like. They fell short by about $10 million in terms of what it was going to cost to get us out of the ground, but that is all behind us, and we are now out and building up.
All righty, glad to see it's on budget, and I like the red, yellow, green already. I'm always looking for the color, so I appreciate that on that slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Curry. Member Darash.
Yeah, thank you. No, I'm reflecting on the answers. I too would have expected we would have done, some very significant geotech testings as is normal practice, and I accept the proviso that when you get into construction, sometimes because you're using tests versus actually going in there. So, I'm not sure the conversation's over that. I guess we'll see how things go, whether we would, have some recourse on that. But I'll leave that for now. My question was more on the slide on committed versus the budgeted. If you could just go back to that slide. I'm sorry, I don't remember the number. And yeah, I think it's that one. Yeah, so I assume when you say committed, it's committed. We haven't paid the contractor 138 million at this point in time, right? So there's presumably some payments that are part of that, and then we just expect that we will obviously have to pay the other pieces, but we haven't paid 138 million to the contractor at this point, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And the contingency, how much is left in the contingency? You probably said it. I was just jumping all over this slide.
Yeah, so initially our contingency was set at 7.5% of the overall budget, which is about $8 million. So far, we've committed $14 million to the contingency, which includes both the direct cost of the piling, as well as the indirect costs with the delays that occurred because of the time that was eaten up in remediating the piling. So that totals a total of $10 million. For the pilings, or a $14 million contingency at this point.
So if I understand you, $4 million is left in contingency?
As we bring on B.2, we're rebaselining the contingency, but there is nothing left in the contingency because initially it was only set at $8 million. As we know the fixed costs of the pilings, both direct and indirect costs, as well as bringing online that top floor, which we've called B.2, we know we need to rebaseline our contingency. As we're rebaselining that, what we're indicating though is that it is all within the budget envelope that was provided for the original project.
Okay. I would just echo the comments that I like that we are doing our best to keep the greens there and on the cost, as much as there is potentially some additional budget capacity if we could continue on that path to keep that in the green. The schedule's in the red. I always say you don't miss what you don't have. So I think the public this project's been in the books, decades. So I think there's some patience there that the community would accept. So long as we're getting a quality product, being responsible, and sort of containing the costs. So look forward to further updates and seeing continued green, as Director Curry said. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Darash. Member Curry.
And just on the 6 million from the city, I mean, that was in the report, but it wasn't really discussed in this slide. I don't know if somebody wants to make a comment on that, where, during negotiations for the last budget, there was that 6 million. I don't know if that might help also Member DeRoche understand what's happening with this contingency.
So the $6 million was directly attributed to land fees, so purchasing of the land on the South Campus. And as we went through last year's budget, the city identified that they would forgive that amount. So we decreased the budget for this build by that $6 million. And as Ingrid indicated, funneled that back to our capital reserve funds.
Okay, great. Sorry if I missed that. I just didn't see it on a slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Will. Member Darash, is that still an old hand, or do you have another question?
It is an old one, but I'll jump in if you'll let me.
Sure.
How has been the public, any concerns from the public? I certainly haven't heard from colleagues that there's been any kind of public concerns. Carlton Lodge, obviously a big project like that, we're sensitive to the neighbors, and we're trying to be a good neighbor as much as we can. I haven't heard anything, so that's usually the performance measure that things aren't too bad. I wondered if you could just comment on kind of impacts. Obviously the piling, I mean, I heard them in Riverside South, and they weren't too onerous, but that's the kind of activity that can cause some feedback from the community. So just curious how what is really a high impact project is going over with the neighbors, in particular Carlton Lodge. Thanks.
So you indicated what we try and do all the time, and Ingrid and her team are doing an amazing job at working with Councillor Lowe, who's been a great advocate and link for us into the community. We're spending a lot of time trying to be a good neighbor in that neighborhood. So we've tried to manage any of the impacts around piling with the direct neighbors as well as the indirect neighbors. We continually, Ingrid and her team continually go to Carlton Lodge, make sure we provide them updates. We're shortly, once the weather's nicer, we're going to have an open house for them so that they can take a look at what their new neighbors is going to look like. So the neighborhood impact is something we're well aware of and trying to manage. And I can't speak highly enough of Councillor Lowe, who has been very active with us through this to help manage any of the issues and brings any problems that exist to us very quickly to remediate.
Thank you, Deputy.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Okay, any questions by any of the other board members? Seeing none, it is recommended that the Ottawa Police Service Board's Finance and Audit Committee receive this item for information. Is the report received?
Received.
Thank you. One of the things that we're scheduled to do for this year with the Finance and Audit Committee is we have a standing update on quality assurance. Chief, I'll pass it over to you for your update.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm just looking, I'll be handing it over to John Steinbachs and his team. I think we need Cameron Hopgood, which I see him now. So John, over to you to introduce your team.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, just if we can get Cam on and Therese. Do you see Therese there?
Cam is on.
Yeah, I'm not sure why Therese. I'm trying to let her in, and maybe she has a problem. I got a message always declining to be promoted. Maybe she has an issue, a connection issue. Let me try again.
It looks like she's up.
There she is. I'll hand it over to Cam, who'll be doing the introduction. Take it away, Cam.
Awesome. Just getting a message here from Therese. Hopefully everything's good. Also, we're really excited to be here today. Chair and committee members, we certainly know that the board is looking for more meaningful and regular reporting around internal audit and quality assurance. And today's conversation is another step in that direction in terms of providing the board with more information that supports their oversight work. We've met with Habib in terms of framing this presentation today, and we're excited to walk you through it. As we touched on before, what you're going to hear in this presentation today is an update on the legislative context, specifically around the Community Safety and Policing Act and how it informs our work and the layers of oversight already in place. Therese who is our manager of quality assurance and internal audit, is with us today, and she's going to walk you through where we are in terms of the internal audit work plan, as well as the follow-ups that have been completed so far. And to that point, what I wanted to mention was that one of the key items in our 2023 work plan was reviewing outstanding management action plans. So today you're going to hear about the progress that we've made to that end in the 2023 plan. You'll see a snapshot today of what's been addressed, as well as some things that still need attention. The last part of the presentation today is, again, a conversation around the reporting process. We want to continue to have that process evolve to meet the committee's needs and requirements. So we're certainly looking forward to your feedback on the areas that we're presenting today that add value, and any areas that you'd like us to go deeper on as we move forward. So with that said, I'll turn it to Therese, and she'll walk you through some of the finer elements of the presentation.
Thank you, Com, and good afternoon, everyone. As we begin, it's important to frame our discussion within the context of the Community Safety and Policing Act, specifically Sections 11 and Ontario Regulation 392/23. These sections guide the focus of our quality assurance and internal audit efforts. Section 11 requires police services to maintain adequate and effective policing, which means ongoing assessment of practices to meet evolving community needs. This is where quality assurance helps ensure operations comply with these standards and continuously deliver effective services. Section 23 of the Regulation 392/23 mandates police services and police service boards to establish and maintain a quality assurance process to ensure compliance, effectiveness, and transparency in service delivery. Our function ensures compliance, enhances operational effectiveness, and supports board oversight. The next slide highlights how our internal quality assurance efforts fit within the broader quality framework. The QA environment is complex and interconnected across multiple levels of accountability. First, we have the Inspectorate of Policing. Under the CSPA, the IOP has the authority to conduct inspections, investigations, and reviews to ensure policing standards are met. As you can see, there are 3 inspections planned for this cycle. The follow-up on major case management inspection, the Part 8 investigation of certain incidents by Chief of Police, and the annual report to the Police Service Board. Next is the Auditor General. We know that the AG has identified 3 audit areas over the next few years, and work is already underway. This includes the audit of staffing, the audit of project management, and the equity, diversity, and inclusion audit. The next one is the OPS, Quality Assurance and Internal Audit. Finally, within the OPS, we have the Quality Assurance and Internal Audit function. As you can see on the next slide, this function operates under a structured framework. The Internal Audit and Quality Assurance team holds a strong set of professional credentials from recognized bodies in finance, internal auditing, and performance measurement. This includes the CPA-CGA, the Certified Internal Auditor, the Certified Fraud Examiner, and the PUMP certifications. These are aligned with international standards, such as those set by the Institute of Internal Auditors, and it connects to evolving best practices through involvement with professional groups like the Municipal Institute of Internal Auditors, the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police Sub-QA Committee, and International Association of Property and Evidence. This year, the IAQA team will expand in capacity. The organization has re-established its commitment to IAQA in the 2025 budget with the creation of manager position. A new senior internal auditor will join the team next week. We are also working on an organizational design review to ensure staffing meets both legislative and board requirements. This added leadership and staffing capacity will enable the function to manage growing demands, deliver on audit priorities, and further strengthen its oversight capabilities. So moving now on the internal audit work plan status. For 2024, we have completed audits of the Property and Evidence Control Facility and the paid duty. The Property and Evidence Control Facility audit report has been finalized, and the report has been issued to the chief for his review. The paid duty audit report has been provided to management to develop action plans in response to the recommendations. Further updates on these 2 engagements will be provided at an upcoming committee meeting. In addition, we continue to support the Office of the Auditor General with their ongoing staffing audit. For the 2025 work plan, we have issued the letter of introduction and are in the planning phase of the intimate partner violence audit. We have begun engaging with the operational area to conduct a preliminary review, which help us identify and prioritize key risk areas. In addition, 2 other audits, youth crime investigations and property and evidence control, are scheduled to begin later this year. So I would like to provide some context around the progress of the Management Action Plan and the structured follow-up process we use to support it. In alignment with the IIA's global standards, internal audit follows a formal, evidence-based approach to verifying the completion of all MAPs. Closer to the committed deliverable date, internal audit contacts management to verify MAP completion. Once the management indicates that an action is complete, internal audit reviews supporting documentation to confirm that the associated business risk has been effectively addressed. Only after this verification is the item recommended for closure and the MAP status updated to completed. Before 2023, the MAP implementation progressed more slowly than anticipated. This was influenced by several factors, including the COVID-19 pandemic, the convoy protests, and internal leadership transitions, all of which impacted organizational capacity. To reset and strengthen accountability, all outstanding MAPs were reassessed in the 2023 as part of the IA work plan. The outcome of this was reviewed and approved by both management and senior leadership team, and revised timelines were established for several long outstanding items. Since May 2023, we've seen substantial progress, as you can see on the slide. Completion action plans have increased by 74% from 50 to 87. Overdue items have decreased by 59% from 44 to 18. This progress shows continued collaboration between internal audit and management. Most of the remaining MAPs are from recent audits and are actively being worked on. In 2024, 15 audit recommendations have now been implemented, resulting in operational and policy improvements across several key areas. Completed items include updating policy to require mandatory forensic testing for all sexual assault evidence kits, strengthened controls around personal leave tracking, the full launch of the workplace harassment program and updated supporting policies, implementation of OSL system updates to improve performance and security. So this slide shows the audits that currently have outstanding MAPs. With the revised deadlines, one item has been overdue for longer than a year. This relates to a recommendation in the overtime audit in which CID management committed to reviewing their staffing levels and operational practices to more effectively manage overtime requirements. Some delays are due to interdependencies or implementation challenges, particularly where cross-functional coordination is required. For example, action items that require system updates and enhancements, such as changes to RMS or SAP, depend on coordination with external parties like Versaterm or the city. These updates often involve development cycles and integration testing, which can extend timelines beyond internal control. Internal audit monitors all open items closely and includes their status in our quarterly updates to the SLT. Any revised target dates are endorsed at the DC level and approved by the chief to ensure accountability. So there are 2 action plans with potential compliance implications. First, the skills development and learning plan must be updated every 3 years per board policy and ministry standards. Delays here can affect consistent prioritization of training. The second one is around overtime expense recording, which continues to be impacted by system limitations, raising concerns about the accuracy in financial reporting and compliance with the public sector's accounting standards. Both areas are being actively monitored, and we will keep the FAC informed on their progress. Beyond audit, we will develop a standardized QA framework to guide consistent quality practices organization-wide. This includes aligning policies with the CSPA, conducting risk assessments, integrating key performance indicators, and using technology to enhance our QA capacity. We are also onboarding a new senior internal audit specialist and a quality assurance specialist and leveraging consulting services where needed to boost our bandwidth. This work includes building strong relationships with each section across the organization to embed quality assurance practices and drive continuous improvement at the operational level. The last slide outlines the current reporting requirements to the board as set out in the CR9, the Audit Requirements Policy. We are committed to meeting these requirements and remain open to incorporating any additional reporting elements that the board feels would further strengthen oversight and transparency. That ends my presentation. Thank you. I now turn this back to the chair for feedback or comments or questions.
Thank you for that report. I noticed going to change things around. Member Darash.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I think it would be appropriate that I say we need to catch up on these recommendations, right, and ensuring that we're doing it. So I'd like to hear from the chief or whoever that there's a commitment to following up on these.
And thank you, Member DeRoche. It is these recommendations and all the audits. They did a big review of all the recommendations about a year and a half ago. Got a number of them done, but it is we do have bandwidth capacity issues as well too. That's been part of a lot of our issue. Our Therese lifts a heavy load, but it's a very small team, and the audits have been, as she noted, or maybe it was Cameron, that there is a lot of levels of oversight now, and it's hard to keep up, but it certainly is something that we're focused on.
Okay, good to hear that. Thank you. I think, but was there something else someone wanted to add, Chair?
Nope, not that I'm aware of.
Oh, okay. So on the one hand, I agree, and glad to hear there's a commitment to do that. On the other hand, I look to the auditors too, that when you come up with a recommendation, that there's some negotiation with the service to say, what is a practical plan here in terms of realization of this? Because there's going to be some that obviously it's not going to be done overnight. It's going to take several years. Nothing gets done very quickly in this day and age, right? In terms of procurement or what have you. And they're focused on operations. So while they may come up as a red light that they haven't done it, I appreciate that some of the recommendations might have some medium to longer term timeframes in terms of implementation. And I think when you frame your recommendations, that there's some sensitivity to the service's ability to follow up. So question to the auditors in terms of how they come up with a recommendation, talking to the service to ensure that the recommendation, is achievable, and kind of what are sort of some reasonable timeframes in terms of follow-up.
Reese, Chief, do you want us to speak to that?
You're the auditor, Cameron or Therese, please.
Sure thing. I'll pass it to Therese to answer that question on how the process evolves there.
Okay, thanks, Cam. So we do work with management when they develop action plans. So we make sure that operational and competing priorities are being recognized when those management action plans are developed. Sometimes, though, what happened in the past is that there are changes in the leadership, right? So when that happens, and when they move from one function to the other, or some actually retired, and so when somebody become the new manager or new inspector in an area, that is something that has not been fully debriefed at that point, and so they take on. And as you said, the priority is always operations. But we worked, and so that's why in 2023 we did do a reset, and we did say, hey, if these are recommendations no longer relevant to the current environment, we review them. We come up with new due dates, and that was the discussion moving forward. And then we're hoping that, with the regular reporting to the SLT, priorities are priorities or recommendations that really have implications in terms of compliance areas will be are being given priority. And we did see that in the last last 18 months where we did see progress. And I see John has his hands up, so maybe John has something to add as well.
John?
Yeah, to Teresa's point there, we have made a lot of progress on catching up on these and working with management. And part of the reason we've added this with Chair Donaldson and Habib was to make sure that the board has line of sight on on our completion rate. So as the goal is that as we come back, we're going to be showing that progress as we go. But yeah, everyone is discussing these things, and we are working through them. We're very confident we're going to be getting through this list.
Okay, thanks. And last question through you, Chair, to the Chief. I don't think it's out of order, but can you just speak to generally that in your performance agreements with your management that you have something in there to this effect that there's some obligation for follow-up on these, generally speaking?
I Member Drosh, I don't recall having specific comments directed to quality assurance recommendations. So I would say that there isn't.
Okay.
I just looked at the deputies because they have direct line with their superintendents, and if I'm off the line there, but certainly like as it relates to our general work, all the different pockets that we have to do, and again, this like this sort of industry follows a lot of the oversight that we have outside of the board when it comes to the Inspector General now and the OAG at the City Hall and LECA or the provincial complaints. There's a whole lot of programs that feed into us, so we don't comment on every one of them in the performance side of it. So my general answer is specifically no, it isn't.
Okay. Yeah. Those are all for now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Drosh. Member Curry.
Yeah, thank you very much for this. I will say, as a member of the city's audit committee, I'm thrilled to see this and to just see the progress and see that there were eyes on this. And I can appreciate that the pandemic and the convoy and everything else would have slowed things down, but I'm glad to see that there, you identified which ones were not completed. Many of them have been completed now, and, you still have these remaining ones. So I just want to say overall, I'm very glad to see this. I'm glad to see that you have additionally, I think 2 extra staff that will be helping is what I counted, unless I didn't see a different slide, but that is a great thing. And I just want to ask a few questions. So number one, with the 2 additional staff, do you think you'll be able to, I don't say this in that I would want more and more audits, because believe me, what I hear from our Ottawa Auditor General is that you can't just simply just audit everything at the same time. Like the pressure on staff, the pressure on everybody to do that, you just don't do things like that. But do you think with 2 additional staff, you will have enough staff now to do what you believe you need to do with your annual plan?
So yeah, sure. I'll jump in. Thanks, Chief. With that, for sure, we are definitely increasing our capacity to support the work of the audit plan. In some other organizations, you'll see that 1 auditor to 1 audit almost per year, depending on the level and nature of the engagement in terms of how comprehensive it is. So absolutely, we'll increase our capacity. Just one point of clarification is that we have 1 senior auditor coming on board next week. Actually, we're really excited about that, and we have another position that remains vacant. And also part of this work is a bit of an org design review that we're undertaking right now with Teresa and myself, with external consulting support, to make sure that we are in alignment with our QA requirements as our alignment with the Act. So more to come on that, but certainly a step in the right direction. And I think we shared this in the last report, but we've also onboarded consulting support so that, at the direction of the board or the organization, we can scale up our capacity quicker. And we know that's a common practice within the city as well as other organizations as well.
Yeah, 100%. You know, there's so many different topics, so you can't expect to have everything in-house, that expertise. So, fair enough. I was also wondering in the presentation there about, you know, with the board's role, and that was very helpful. That slide's still up. So the annual reporting of the audit work plan, for sure. And then this, critical findings needing immediate board attention. What is the threshold for critical findings? I mean, I can't imagine right now what one would be. But is there something written that explains to the board what critical findings we would be expected to look at?
Chief, did you want me to, I don't know if it's appropriate for me or if Habib wants to speak to that. In terms of board policy, to my knowledge, there's no further definition of what constitutes critical. Habib may have more to offer on that. And we've taken a step in terms of this presentation, just to flesh out the thought, in terms of identifying compliance-related findings as something that would meet the threshold for board awareness. But Habib may have more to offer on that.
Director Syed, do you want to comment?
No, the policy doesn't provide more detail on how it can be defined. It may be good for the board and the service to have a conversation about that threshold, but so far there is no guidance on interpreting the requirement.
Okay. Because I mean, you know, critical means different things to different people, right? Certainly compliance would be for one. The other, I mean, I think for the board is value for money. And I don't know how many audits you're doing in that category heading, under that category heading. But I guess this will evolve, or are you expecting the board to give more direction on that at all?
If I noticed, John Steinbeck's got his hand up.
So one of the conversations we had early on with the chair and Habib was to have this come back to the board on a quarterly basis or have some type of stand-up discussion. So yes, we've made a lot of progress. We're bringing on new staff. There's a new act. It's a far more complicated auditing environment than we had, let's say, 4 years ago. So we're hoping these conversations, like even as you're talking now, we'll take that back and come back and try to answer some of these questions as we roll these discussions out. So the whole critical findings issue, it has been an issue for years because there is no definition, but we're hoping that this conversation evolves so that we can kind of get more of a regularity to the finance and audit committee. So yes, I guess would be the answer to you.
Okay, great. And as for the due dates conversation, when I understand our Auditor General at the city, I mean, it is very much a back and forth and asking staff management, what do you think is realistic? You know, like we can demand things all we like, but if it just means you're going to come back and say we didn't get it done, that's not helpful. So can you share, you're maybe just going to say yes, but those conversations do take place in asking staff what is realistic, and that when we see a due date slip, I mean, then there's more question for the board to say, we imagined that you agreed on this due date, and so there better be a good reason for the due date slipping.
I think to your point, Member Curry, the answer is yes.
Okay, great. I was going to say, I know you haven't hired the other person yet, but do you envision you doing any agile audits? You know, our Auditor General's done an agile audit of our zero emissions buses and then Lansdowne. Do you imagine doing any of those? I mean, the South facility might have been a good example of one, but do you see the possibility of that happening, or are any of the ones you're doing actually agile?
Chief, would you like me to answer that again, sir? Sure. I just
Yes,
wanted to.
I think I know the answer to that, but I would like you to answer that, please.
Thank you. We're not there yet. Honestly, we're staffing up and building out the quality assurance and internal audit area, but certainly something that we are mindful of and definitely is top of mind in terms of the type of audits and engagements that we could tackle, and certainly the approach. But with more staff, those opportunities will be more present, as it's been difficult with Therese being the loan auditor for several years, wearing multiple hats, supporting the process from end to end. It's really put us behind. So now with new capacity coming on and expanding the capability and being more aligned with board requirements as well as the legislative needs, we'll certainly be better positioned to move in that direction.
Okay, great. I honestly couldn't be happier with this. You know, I can understand that this has been challenging, but I'm really happy to see this. I want to reiterate to the chief that I'm really glad that when the chief came in, this was one of the things that he put his mind to right away, that this needed to be looked at, because it is important. And I will also say that, you know, like the city's audit committee, this audit committee is not an audit committee that's looking for any gotcha moments. You know, if there is a problem and an audit unearths, it's not to sort of say, you know, oh, wow, this, you know, there's terrible work going on, but to sort of say, you know, what is the problem and how can we help? You know, what needs to be done or change? You know, if there's an audit that's done that impacts what we are expecting from the strategic plan. So fundamentally, we've said to the chief, okay, here's the strategic plan. We expect this to be done. You have an audit and it's still internal and it's not a critical situation, but you believe that this audit is showing something that the board needs to understand better. But again, it's not a critical finding. It's just that it has really unearthed a problem that the board needs to be aware of. I would really encourage you to bring it to this committee, certainly, or to the whole board, because as I said, this is not about gotcha. It's about let's figure out what's wrong and see if we can't do something to fix that. Anyway, love this report, love this presentation, and really glad to hear things are moving in a positive direction. Thank you.
Thanks, Member Curry. I'm just piecing little nuggets together from what we've had in this presentation. And if I understand things correctly, that contracted consultants aside, the significant improvement in audits being completed and the comparable decrease in late reports is a result of one person, namely Therese, addressing this issue. So congratulations to her for an amazing job to get us to this point. Obviously, having an additional person coming on board next week will be a substantial improvement. Are there any particular timelines assigned as far as being able to hire the third person? I know, if I understand correctly, you're just in the process of looking at the rationale for it or the descriptions of what's required. But again, this presentation suggested that everything will be completely zeroed out by 2025, by the end of 2025. So I'm assuming there is some kind of comparable timeline as far as what's required to bring that third person on board.
What I can add to that question, Chair Donaldson, is that all of our staffing is sequenced in line with the staffing stabilization plan, and we're working closely with HR to make sure that those critical vacancies get filled in the context of a larger plan.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, Cameron.
No problem.
Any further questions from the committee members or any members of the board who are present? Call the question that the Police Services Board Finance and Committee receive this item for information. Is the item received?
Received.
Thank you. And compliments to the presentations and reports we received of this Finance and Audit Committee, but especially I'm extremely pleased that we're able to move forward on looking at an ongoing item of business, looking at the internal audit. So thank you for that. This concludes our items of business. Our next committee meeting will be on Friday, June 27th, 2025 at 10 a.m. Can I please have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day and thank you for this. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.